Blog Talk Radio.
Hello. How you doing, folks? Hope you are doing well, and I am glad you're here to listen to another live recorded podcast with me here at Danny Tisdale, the Danny Tisdale Show. And today we welcome, as we always try to do, have Harlem leader, legend, and trailblazer with us as we celebrate Harlem, the greatest community in the world. And don't forget to hit us up on our social media. Just put in Harlem World Magazine on any of the platforms for the most part, and you'll be connected to us. And you can always hit us up at harlemworldinfo@yahoo, or just go to our YouTube page to listen to more of our podcasts. Today we have, I think it's a great conversation, and I'm sure that you will too, David Nocenti. He is the executive director of Union Settlement, the oldest and largest social service provider in East Harlem. They are doing great work. Don't just go by what I say. Go to their website and find out what they're doing. And quite frankly, this podcast, to give you an example of that, I think it was last week, they released a presidential poll showing that Democratic voters in East Harlem picked Joe Biden as their first choice for the 2020 Democratic presidential nomination. Biden received 30.5% of the first place votes, followed by Elizabeth Warren, 22.9%, Bernie Sanders, 17.8%, and Kamala Harris at 14.4%. We think this is pretty important, especially as leading up to the election. And so we thought, of course, it would be great to have Mr. Nocenti here to talk about that. And the gods have praised us, and he's here to talk to us. How are you today, Mr. Nocenti?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
And thank you for being on. I'm really, I love politics. I love Harlem, and I love the work that you're doing at Union Settlement. So this is like Christmas here for me. So I want to get right into it. I talked a little bit about Union Settlement. Tell us a little bit more about Union Settlement, David, and the great work that you've been doing.
Sure, thanks. Happy to do so. So Union Settlement has been in East Harlem since 1895, which means we're going to be celebrating 125 years next year.
Amazing.
And we are basically cradle to old age, multi-generational social service provider. We're the largest provider of early childhood education in East Harlem. We do after-school programs and summer programs for elementary and middle school students. We help about 200 to 300 young people get into college every year, most of whom are the first in their family to get to college. We have a disconnected youth program for youth that have dropped out or are looking to get re-engaged. We do English language classes, high school equivalency classes. We do mental health counseling. We do small business assistance. We do Meals on Wheels. We have senior centers. It's really a great organization that provides a whole wide array of benefits, not just to East Harlem residents, but others who live in other areas and come for our services.
But David, when are you guys going to start doing some real work in the community? That's one of my jokes. Okay, it may not go over that well.
Okay.
But I really wanted to ask you, before we kind of get into the survey, everybody wants to know what is the secret sauce of, doing long-term business and doing long-term business in a community. What is it, David, the secret sauce to doing business in a community like Harlem, East Harlem specifically, 125 years? Is there a secret sauce that we could buy off the shelf?
There actually, believe it or not, there actually is, and that is to be embedded in the community. So Union Settlement is part of the settlement house movement that started in the late 1800s, and there's other settlement houses out there, Henry Street Settlement, Grand Street Settlement, et cetera. Right. And they all have the same approach, is really to be community-based. And they're called settlement houses because the people, the workers, would settle into low-income communities under the belief that you really couldn't assist individuals in a neighborhood unless you were living among them, that you would learn as much from the people you're serving as they would learn from you, and that you would bring the reason that I just listed a broad array of services, and that's because the theory is you really can't help individuals unless you help the entire family, and you can't help a family unless you're working in the entire community. So you might have a mother who drops their kid off for child care, but if she's going to be facing eviction and you're not working with her on that, you're not really helping the child either. And so that's why we have this broad array. When people come in, we want to know just not just what they think they need, but who else is in their household, what are the other needs that they have. And then we do that on a community-wide basis as well. We do great elementary and middle school after-school programs, but then all the kids get gang involved. Unless we're doing anti-gang work too, all that work that we've done gets lost. And so it's really important to have this broad array. And to basically, we picked East Harlem. We're going to be here forever. There's never going to be a Union Settlement, New Jersey, or Union Settlement, Queens. And this is the neighborhood that we've, and when we got here, it was a German, Irish, English neighborhood. Then it became an Italian American and Jewish neighborhood. Then it became an African American and Puerto Rican neighborhood. And now it's this amazing mosaic of individuals. And we are just, committed to the community and being ready to change with the needs as they arise.
Well, I'm going to use a word that you use as a segue, and you said change, even though I have many questions for you just about Union Settlement and the great work that you are doing and that Settlement has been doing and that you continue to do. But I also want to talk about the survey. And, maybe the first obvious question, at least for me, is why did you do it? It seems like you've been focusing on the other things that you're doing a number of them. But why this kind of survey? And is this the first time you've done this?
So it's the first presidential survey we've done, but Union Settlement strongly believes not just in providing services, but also being strong advocates for low-income communities. And and so, you can move individuals or families out of poverty one person at a time, but if you can advocate for change, think of the impact of the minimum wage going up to $15, with impact that has been paid sick leave, things like that. So we are advocates as well as service providers. And again, as an embedded East Harlem organization, it's important for us to always be listening to the voices of the individuals that we're serving. So every 2 years, we do a comprehensive participant survey of the people who are utilizing our services to find out not just, what do they think of them. In many ways, it's a customer satisfaction survey. Are we being, cordial? Are the places clean? Are we giving them the services they need? But we're also asking, what are the community needs? Because, again, if there's a big need in the community for, to address the youth gang issues, then, that's what we want to do. And so every 2 years, we will do a survey and we'll be asking them, what are the top issues for them? And so we're used to trying to get the voices of the community. And then we discussed internally here, and obviously everybody's paying attention to the presidential campaign. And I guarantee you go onto all the presidential campaign websites and you can find out what their position is on ethanol, because that's really important to Iowa. And, but we don't really know what their positions are on, rent stabilization laws. And so the way the primaries are set up, Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, and Nevada, which are largely rural states, there's a real likelihood that the candidate field is going to be narrowed very substantially before you ever really hear from urban, low-income communities. We had mentioned, East Harlem has 125,000 people, and we'd be the largest city in New Hampshire. We'd be the second largest city in South Carolina and third largest in Iowa. But these types of low-income urban communities aren't going to be heard from until March of next year. And by that time, there might be, only candidates running who are not attuned to our issues. So I thought it was important, and we thought it was important to sort of poll our members and get a sense of who they thought was, were speaking to their issues, and then put that out.
And that's fantastic, and it makes complete sense what you're saying and the reason for doing what you've done. Will you do another between now and the election, and if not, how will you use this survey?
Well, we will.
Of the survey?
Yeah, no, we definitely intend to do another one. And obviously, there's 20 candidates right now. Or Tom Steyer has since gotten in, so I think they're up to 21 now. And so we're not going to do one immediately. There's going to be, people are going to be dropping out, so we're not sure when we will do the next one. But again, we're actually hoping that other communities like this will consider doing their own surveys, because basically we need to have the candidates speaking to the needs of low-income urban communities, and not just the more rural populations that they're talking about right now.
David, that's a great point. And with all the smart minds in our office and online, I don't think, at least we thought of it that way, that, in some ways it becomes our own kind of wet your finger, put it in the air to see which way the wind's blowing, sensibility to find out, like you said, there are national surveys. Rarely do we see local surveys and the results of those surveys. And, it's a great way of doing that. And, maybe Harlem World Magazine should think of, just to see where our readers stand and which way they are going.
Yeah, I mean, bottom line is that you have a much broader reach than Union Settlement does, and, your readers, would want to be heard. And as it stands right now, it's not going to be until the New York primary when there might only be 3 candidates left. And so, they should be speaking, and if more people like Union Settlement and Harlem World Magazine do these types of things, then the candidates will have to start paying attention and saying, "Hey, I've got to understand the needs of these communities. I've got to speak to what I'm going to do about them."
And David, I'm curious about a guy like you doing the work that you're doing. Why Union Settlement? Why a nonprofit? Let me ask the question differently. Why are you working in the nonprofit sector as opposed to for-profit?
Well, I mean, I actually had a career as a lawyer before I came to Union Settlement, and I was mostly in government. I worked at the federal, state, and local levels as a lawyer, doing a lot of legislative and policy issues. First worked at the Department of Justice, then I went up to Albany and worked for Governor Mario Cuomo, and I was basically in government because I felt that government has an obligation to help people in need. And so when I decided to leave government and to go into the nonprofit world, it was an easy segue. Because this is what gets me up in the morning. I mean, I don't really want to get up and figure out how to sell more of a particular product, or figure out how to increase profits for a corporation. There's such a tremendous amount of need that's out there. There's such a tremendous income inequality that's out there. There's such a tremendous amount of work that needs to be done, and that I want to be part of that. And it makes it easy to get up every morning, because I never wake up and say, "Oh my God, I have to go to work today." Every day is like, okay, there's challenges here, but we have to try to figure out how to overcome those challenges, and it makes it easy to go to work every day.
Yeah, I hear you, and it's the same for me. It doesn't feel like a job. I'm going to do something that I love, and let's get it on. I was trying, I've got about 15,000 questions I want to ask you, and I only can ask you about 4 or 5 with the time that we have. So I'm curious, what will happen? David, let me take a quick, we're at that halfway point. I'm going to take a quick station ID and let our listeners know they're listening to the Danny Tisdale podcast, which is brought to them by Constant Contact. Constant Contact is our online marketing company, that creates email marketing campaigns like a pro with easy-to-use features. Their editor makes it easy to customize an email template, design professional, mobile responsive emails that look great on every single device that you have. Harlem World Magazine uses Constant Contact, and we love it. We use it for our email list building that you'll see if you go to the website, harlemworldmag.com. Click the link below and get connected. It's a blast. And you're listening to the Danny Tisdale Show on Harlem World Radio, and we're speaking to David Nocenti, who's Executive Director of Union Settlement, and we're discussing the fantastic, seems like an easy idea, but he executed it. And it's a 2020 survey for Democratic presidential nominations. And, David, I guess I'm going to go there and ask you the next question. Somebody out there might be listening and say, okay, wow, Union Settlement did the survey, 2020 Democratic presidential nominations. I'm a Republican. I'm not saying that I am, David. This is that person out there who's saying, you know what, I'm a Republican. I wonder if they're going to do a survey like that for Republicans when they're ready to run against our president. Will you do something like that?
Well, actually, we already did. So this is a nonpartisan poll, and so we surveyed, we surveyed our program participants, and it was an electronic online poll, and if you clicked Democrat, you would go to one poll, and if you picked Republican, you would go to a different poll, and if you clicked that you weren't registered, you went to a poll of all the candidates. Now, the problem was that obviously we only want to report the results that are reliable, and so the vast majority of the individuals who we serve here in East Harlem indicated that they were registered Democrats, and so those are the results reported. There were so few Republicans, so even though Donald Trump and Bill Weld were listed as the current announced Republican candidates, there were not enough respondents to make it statistically significant, and so we didn't feel that it was appropriate to report those results. But we are definitely a nonpartisan organization, and if we do it again and it's closer and we get more Republicans to respond, then we would report those results as well.
Fantastic. We're nonpartisan also, so I completely understand what you're saying. But I wanted to. It's not controversial, but I just want to ask a tricky question and to see what your take on it is. I was talking to a friend of mine a while back, and I said, I was just raised by parents who, pretty much straight shooters, and especially my mother always felt that, things happen for a reason or else they wouldn't happen. And so my take on our president that we have now is that we were destined to get a president like this because it gives us an opportunity to, check ourselves, look in the mirror and look at our values and look at our ethics. And so we can do that by having a president like we have, and I think coming out of this, it will reconnect us. We'll look at the things that are more important to us like we've never had to do in quite a while. And so, I think we were destined to have a president like we have now. What are your takes? What's your take on that?
Well, I don't know if we were destined, but I think it certainly did crystallize for everybody the importance of voting, the importance of participating in democracy, the importance of listening to the voters and responding to them. Because, Donald Trump clearly, rode a wave of anti-government feeling, and, I don't think a lot of people knew exactly who he was as a person. They might have voted for him for any of a variety of reasons, but there's now a very stark contrast between the Republican and Democratic parties and, where they're taking the country. And so, many people have said, and I've said, that this is the next election is sort of an election for the soul of the nation, and so we're going to see.
Very good.
I'm not going to, assume any results. I think, Trump certainly has a lot of arguments that he's making in favor of his reelection, and we're definitely going to see, where it goes from there.
can you talk a little bit more about what you mean by the soul of the nation? I think I have a good idea, but I'm curious. I may be wrong. What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, again, I'm in a nonpartisan position. I want to stay nonpartisan, and so, but the reality is that the current administration is putting out rhetoric that many believe to be racist and anti-immigrant and against a lot of things that a lot of people in the country stand for, and at the same time a lot of it is just not truthful. And so trying to restore, the basic values that, everybody in government should always be honest and give accurate information out is important. And so I think, to me, we're going to see, where the country is going to go, and not to say that Democrats have a patent on truthfulness or accuracy. I mean, there's definitely people spinning on all sides. But I think it's important for us to, consider, who we are as a nation as far as, empathy and, where we stand on the words at the bottom of the Statue of Liberty of accepting the huddled masses and not trying to, treat everybody who's not currently in the United States as someone that should never get here, and trying to quote unquote send back people who are already here. So.
Yeah, quite amazing time that we live in, and I guess it was last week that Boris Johnson became the new Prime Minister of Great Britain, and I guess they call him the Trump imitator, the Trump Trump-like. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And David,
we're seeing nationalism, all across the world. You've seen it in a lot of the European countries, and a lot of anti-immigrant fervor, and so it's something that we have to struggle with, not just here in the United States, but as society as a whole.
Yeah, and I love the fact though that the symbols of democracy, and one of them is your survey. Some could say, well, in a small way. Some could say in a big way. Some could say, well, somewhere in the middle. But this is how democracy works. You reach out to the people. You ask how they feel about issues and go from there. And I want to ask you a more direct question. Oh, please.
Yeah, I was going to say, because you mentioned the survey and you had given at the top the first choice votes, but for those of your listeners who aren't aware, this was a ranked preference survey. So it wasn't just tell us who your top candidate was. You were able to rank as many candidates as you wanted, and the results of that portion of the poll were really interesting because although, as you mentioned, Joe Biden was in first with 30%, then Elizabeth Warren with 22%, Bernie Sanders with 17.8%, and then Kamala Harris. When you go to the second and third and fourth choices, Biden still finished first, but Kamala Harris actually jumped from fourth place to second, and Cory Booker went from ninth place to third. And so, usually when people report on poll results, they'll just say, what the top line results are. But it was very interesting to see, like Bernie Sanders had dropped, so he might be the top choice of a bunch of people, but not necessarily the second, third, fourth, or fifth choice of other people. And you see people like Kamala Harris and Cory Booker and Pete Buttigieg actually moving up, and it just shows that they have sort of maybe a breadth or depth of strength that might not be showing in some of the initial first place only voting polls.
That's interesting because if my memory serves me correct, and I don't always rely on it, I think that's being echoed in the national polls. Some of what you talked about.
shows about, where people are moving and who's having, particular direction. But, I mean, Cory Booker as the first choice didn't get picked by many people at all, but he was obviously picked second or third by a whole bunch of people because he jumped from ninth to third. And I think that's, when they were doing polls of, 20 people, I think it's important, the responsibility of the national media really, not just to do these, beauty contest polls or name recognition polls, but to dig a little deeper behind them.
David, don't get me started on the national media, and I'm not just saying that because I'm local media. For the reasons you just mentioned, yes, I definitely feel that. But we're at the last 5 minutes, and I wanted to ask you, David. You're executive director of Union Settlement, as I said earlier, the oldest, largest social service provider in East Harlem. What tips, what ideas, what suggestions do you have for someone who's listening in and they're saying, I love the way this guy does what he does, and I want to follow in his hush puppies and work as executive director in a nonprofit and a nonprofit that has the legacy that Union Settlement has. What is your suggestion to someone, David, who wants to be you?
Just get involved. Bottom line, there's Union Settlement. Obviously, that's where my heart is. But there's a lot of great nonprofits out there. Depending on where you live, research local nonprofits. All of them have websites. You can go to Union Settlement at www.unionsettlement.org. Volunteer. You may want to, go and volunteer for a while and see what sort of, get a sense of the organization. You can volunteer by coming and doing Meals on Wheels. You can volunteer by helping teach an English language class. You can, join our board. We have an associate board as well, and other nonprofits do as well. So if you're looking to really, give back and create opportunities for people who might not have the opportunities that you have, is really to find a nonprofit that speaks to you, whose mission speaks to you, and to reach out to them and see where you can get involved.
I love it. Find a nonprofit that speaks to you. And, David, we always ask people, and we're, my guests, their favorite place in Harlem. What's your favorite place in Harlem outside of Union Settlement? Outside of Union Settlement, David.
I think there's too many. I mean, I know I live in East Harlem now. I work on 104th Street. Union Settlement has 14 different locations from 98th Street up to 122nd Street. We're in a lot of local schools as well for our after school and our middle school programs. So, to me, I just love walking the streets. I mean, it's just a vibrant neighborhood. We have to change people's perception of what, East Harlem and Harlem are. These are great, wonderful communities with great, art museums and cultural organizations and restaurants. And, I actually love the community garden that's right next to my building here on 104th Street, where people you can live on the 14th floor and have a one-bedroom, but they can have a little tomato garden going. And it's just a nice, really peaceful oasis, away if you don't even think you're in the city anymore when you're in the community garden.
Yeah, it's funny because I'm typically a guy that doesn't like gardens, but over the years, I guess as I get older, knock on wood, more and more I have fallen in love with the gardens in Harlem and even more so around the city. And David, we're at our last minute, and I wanted to have you give our listeners your contact information so that they can come to the website and do some of the things you mentioned, volunteer, be a part of it, phone number of how they can just be a part of the program, donate or volunteer. Can you give our listeners your contact information?
Sure. Again, yeah, everything is on the website at www.unionsettlement.org. There's a Get Involved button on there where you can volunteer. If you want to run the marathon with us, we're a charity partner of the New York Marathon. There's job openings. We have lots of open positions if you're looking for a job. There's job descriptions on there. You can click on there. And you can call me. I'm happy to give out my own direct dial, which is 212-828-6046. I'm happy to help anybody who wants to get involved.
Thank you, David. We're down to our last 10 seconds. Thank you, David, for being on the show, and we'll talk soon. All the best.
Really appreciate it. Take care.